Friends, good morning. I'm wondering if you also felt listening to that first reading a sort of biblical whiplash that I felt when I was going through this reading the other day. We've been hearing all about Solomon, his story, the building of the temple the past couple days, and his awe and his wonder, his reverence, being overwhelmed and astonished at what God has done for him and his people and his family. And then we come to today, and we hear of Solomon's slide into just rampant idolatry flowing from his unbridled lust and consorting with hundreds of wives, this sort of hyper-polygamous kind of situation, and the pagan deities that these wives brought into his world, right? And who were these pagan gods that are just mentioned offhandedly here? What was all this about? Let's go through some of this. So the goddess Astarte, she's one of the goddesses of the Sidonians. She's a goddess of fertility and love and sex and war and hunting. She was sought for agriculture and romance and military success and protection. And her cult, right, her worship, it demanded animal sacrifices and various forms of what they called sacred prostitution. Okay, what about this god Milcom? He's a god of the Ammonites. He was invoked and worshipped for tribal strength and victory in battle, and his cult of worship both included animal and human sacrifice. Chemosh, an idol of the Moabites. The name itself means the subduer. He's the god of warfare, national independence, conquest, the god of holy war and death. And his cult included mass slaughter, human sacrifice, especially of the firstborn, to guarantee military victory. And finally, this god Molech or Moloch, the god of the Ammonites. He's invoked for appeasing divine wrath in times of crisis or turbulence, for protection, for averting disaster, and failure to worship this god invited profound divine retribution. And now, how is Moloch worshipped? Through child sacrifice. The phrase was passing children through fire, burning children alive. Like, this is the paganism the idolatry that Solomon got into bed with, both literally and figuratively. Perhaps you've seen those bumper stickers that say coexist on them. Perhaps you've seen that on people's cars, the ones where all the letters that spell out the word coexist, they're symbols drawn from or associated with different world religions or different worldviews or philosophies. And the implied message, of course, is, hey, listen, man, all world religions, all these worldviews, they're essentially equal. They're essentially the same thing. They're all just different paths up the same mountain. And because of that, we should coexist. We should tolerate these differences. Don't get too upset about this. This idea is known as syncretism, and not only is it a heresy, it's a horrendous notion that leads to this sort of permissive tolerance of that which is utterly intolerable. Like, there are forms of evil in this world that are so intolerable, especially when they masquerade under the guise of religion. Like, no, it's not true that we worship the same God as these other religions. It's not true that we worship the same God vis-a-vis different metaphors and different mythologies. Like, the gods that Solomon began to tolerate and permit the worship of, they are not the same as the God of Israel, revealed by the prophets and bound in sort of loving covenantal relationship with Israel. It's not the same. And we're seeing that kind of playing itself out still in our world and our culture today. Just recently, you probably saw this, that Don Lemon, a former NBC news anchor, he's a journalist, he was just arrested for allegedly taking part in a staged protest in a church in Minneapolis. He's being charged with violating the FACE Act. The FACE Act. What is the FACE Act? It's an acronym, just like all those acts are. It's the Freedom of Access to Clinic Entrances Act. It's a federal law of the United States. It was enacted in 1994, signed into law by Bill Clinton. And it was put into law because it was aimed at protecting access to reproductive health clinics, which is the greatest misnomer of all time. They're abortion clinics, right? And protecting places of religious worship from violence and threats and obstruction. Why was this put into law? Because at the time it was in response to this rising, tide of increasing violence and blockades targeting abortion providers in the early 1990s with murders and clinic bombings and all those sorts of things. So in that measure, it was good. No, the pro-life cause should not advance itself through murdering abortionists and blowing up clinics. That is absolutely inimical to the pro-life cause. But notice that in order to pass the FACE Act, the lawmakers had to put in this provision that the law would equally protect places of worship. Places of worship. So, do you see the implication here? We'll protect your houses of worship, your churches, your synagogues, your congregations, if you protect our houses of worship, these abortion clinics. Right? Moloch and Solomon's pagan gods, they are still worshipped throughout the world. As infants are offered up on the altar of choice and freedom. This past Sunday in the gospel, we heard Jesus in the Sermon on the Mount say to his disciples, "You are the salt of the earth." And we hear that, and it kind of strikes our ear with a sort of southern charm, sort of Cracker Barrel spirituality. Oh, you're just salt of the earth Christians. It's not exactly what he means. There's a lot of senses that you can take that, but one sense in which Jesus meant this in the ancient world was that in military campaigns, right, it referred to the practice of spreading salt over the ruins of a conquered city or a conquered territory, over the enemy's land to render the soil barren for future generations, to stop anything from being able to be grown there. Right? The practice was salting the earth. And he's saying Christians are also meant to be that kind of salt. And boy, is that hard. That is so hard in our world today. We are meant to transform the world through the gospel, through love, through our witness, through suffering, and we're meant to confront evil and to see to it as best we can that it is rendered incapable of flourishing. We're not meant to tolerate it. Friends, this Eucharist that we receive today, may it inflame our hearts with love, right? Love for God, love for souls, love for the truth, love for the lost, and love for the hurting ones whose lives have been ruined by and tangled up in sin and vice and idolatry in our modern world. And may we give ourselves over more entirely, more completely today to Christ, that we can be that kind of salt, right? For the glory of God, for the healing of humanity. Amen.